parents were originally opposed to this a little bit.
Yeah, I think they just didn't know any actors. They were nervous. I wouldn't have a degree to fall back on, or I wouldn't have some sort of serious job to. It's a crazy profession, so they were just sort of nervous I'd end up without a job, which is understandable. I wouldn't want my kid to be an actor, so fair enough.
I hope you can tell a story about how Julian Fellows, whose name just came up with Emily Blunt, how he played into your becoming an actor.
Julian was a good friend of my headmistress when I was at Walden School, you mentioned, and came to give a talk after he won the Oscar for Gospel Park about being a screenwriter and working in the industry. And he was just the first actor I'd ever met, because Julian's an actor as well. So I spoke to him kind of that evening about wanting to be an actor and having parents who weren't particularly into it. And then I left school, and about a year later just got his details and wrote to him and said I was still looking for a way in, really, and hadn't got into council. And him and his wife introduced me to casting directors who introduced me to more casting directors who were casting Pride and Prejudice, which is the first job.
Right.
So it was sort of a, serendipitous chain of events.
He started the chain, yeah.
He started the chain.
That first experience I've heard you talk about before, and you said that Jen Malone and Brenda Blethyn were helpful, and also you mentioned the day that Judi Dench came on set, and I hope you could just talk about your initial experiences on a film set and whether you knew that this was what you were made for, or...
Oh, yeah. It was surreal. It was like being thrown in the deep end, but it was a really warm environment. 3 weeks of rehearsal, which was huge. I now appreciate that. At the time, I was like, oh, this is normal. But 3 weeks of rehearsal is, massive. And Judi Dench was in rehearsal, and she came up to me and said, shook my hand and said, I believe we have the same age. And I was like, I'm on, what is going on? Judi Dench is saying hello to me. It wasn't massive learning curve because I had no idea what I was doing. I was really all in when I showed up on set, and Joe Wright literally had to, poke me into doing interesting things. And I just copied everyone. I copied Jenna, and I lent very heavily on the rest of the cast, and luckily didn't have a part that was particularly important, so I got to learn.
You felt frozen on the day that Judy was working with you?
I talked to her. She, we're doing a scene, and the 5 of us are in the same frame, me and Donald Sutherland, Brenda Blethyn, and Tallulah Riley, Keira Knightley, Rosamund, we're all standing there in one frame, and my face was just blank. I was like, what even should I do with this? Joe came over and was like, you have to do something with your face, you have to move it, or raise your eyebrows, and I was like, I can't. It's mad.
And yet, right after that, in the period after that, you obviously were doing something right. You did Seagull and Brothers and Public Enemies and all these things, but you, to the best of my knowledge, did not have a starring role until in education. So what do you think, before I even ask you about how it came about, what gave Lona the confidence that you were going to be able to do it? Has she said something to you, or have you heard her say something?
No, not really. I mean, she'd seen casting tapes, but when I went in and read with her, she read with me. It wasn't a casting director. Usually the director sits and you read with someone else, and in this, she read. So she played Olivia Williams' part, Miss Stubbs, and we read together. So that was sort of... and then I did another tape when I came out to LA. I made a tape with Rosamund. And we made it in Mindy Merriam's office, who's a casting director here, who's doing us a favour. And we sent that back, sort of as added proof that, so I have no idea why she took a punt on me.
Well, good taste though, but
thank goodness.
Your character changes so much over the course of the film. I know it's, I guess, is it a year that we're watching unfold, the year that she's doing her exams, and I wonder if you can talk about the ways externally that you were, obviously the hair and the makeup and the costume, the dress changed as you were spending more time with Peter's character, but also, from your point of view, how were you? The problem also is that films are shot out of sequence. I don't know if that screwed with your...
Well, no, that was helpful actually, because the first 2 weeks of the shoot were pretty much, apart from one day with Emma. Well, what was great was that one of the first days we shot was with Emma Thompson.
Oh, yeah.
And we shot 4 scenes that are kind of integral because they kind of come as chapters in the films. The 4 sort of chapters are the kind of bollockings that she gets from the teacher. So that kind of marked where she was in the whole story. And then first of all we shot all of the fun stuff. So we shot the greyhound racing, and we shot the dancing, and we shot all of the kind of adventures. And then we went into the schoolroom, so all that kind of wide-eyed enthusiasm and nerves was sort of real, because I was sort of so excited. And I was like, this is great, this is fun, wow. And Dominic and I were friends, we'd known each other for years, and Roz and I had known each other since Pride and Prejudice, so it was as fun as it looked. And then we got into it, so that was helpful. The hair and makeup was completely, the hair and makeup was sort of collaborative and fun, and you know, I know ways, because I've always looked younger, so I know ways to make myself look older, and I know ways to make myself look even younger. So that was fun. But the costume was really imposed on me, and I doubted it so many times. And what's amazing is that it added so much, you know, and I had no idea when I was wearing these things. I was like, I hate this is awful, and that's how I should have been feeling. So.
I read something very interesting, that there was actually a different ending shot for the film.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what that would have been and why it was lost?
In the original version of the script, or at least the shooting script we had, David comes to Oxford and says, you know, I haven't left my wife yet, but I will, and, you know, I love you, and you're my Minnie, and blah, blah, blah. And he's been in prison, and so this was all true. In real life, he did go to prison for about 2 years for fraud. And then he did come to Oxford and asked her to have her back, and she said, bugger off, quite rightly. But it felt like it laboured the point, and that we'd said that already, that there was no need, so it got cut.
I just want to read you a stat and tell me who I'm talking about. This is somebody who's 24 years young, beautiful in a gamma way that allowed her to look both childlike and ladylike, and therefore come of age before the audience's eyes. Nominated for her first starring role, in which she meets a man who helps her escape from the only life she has ever known and see the world anew before returning to where she came from. Who am I talking about?
I don't know.
I'm talking about you, and it also applies to Audrey Hepburn. Exact same thing. 24-year-old British, first starring role, got her Oscar for that. There's been other people that have made the general comparison between you and her. What do you make of it when you hear that? I mean, I happen to agree with it, but you know, the it girl, the star is born. When you hear these things, is it daunting or?
No, I mean, I'm having so much fun now. You know, it's a lot less nerve-wracking. I mean, the comparisons were so embarrassing, because you just think, you know, she was sort of otherworldly, and you feel very kind of normal and frumpy compared to that. But it's, you know, it's very nice, but it's. Yeah, it's just a bit embarrassing.
Well, just wrapping up, celebrity is something I've been very interested in. I wrote a thesis in college about it. I think that, and I've watched over the different past Oscar seasons, you see somebody like an Ellen Page or this year Anna Kendrick from Up in the Air. They sort of emerge from obscurity, and they go through these months of the campaign and the process, and you know, it can't help but change you in some ways or impact you in some ways. What have you made of it? How has it impacted your life already? What are you afraid it may, you know, do you have any hopes or fears or excitement about it?
You know, the only things really where I ever have to do sort of public image things are red carpets. And in my everyday life, you know, I'm very unrecognisable, and I'm never, ever, ever approached. And I think I've been, you know, approached twice, ever. So it doesn't affect me at all outside of things that I consider to be work, which is the red carpets and parties and things that you have to go to for. So, no, I'm not, you know, really, the stuff that's surrounded this film has been great, because it's made more people see the film, and that's what you want. And it's helped me meet some really amazing people and get some really good jobs. But the other side of things, it hasn't really entered my life.
Well, you anticipated the final question, which is that, you know, now you've got the Oscar nomination, you're going to wrap up with having to talk about education constantly after this process ends. I guess it's a month from today, exactly.
I feel like a bereavement, but it's strange.
Right. But what would you like to be next? Is there another actress whose career you'd love to follow the trajectory of, or is there goals that you have for your own future?
No, I've never really had a plan. You know, I think you know, there's actresses whose careers, like, you know, there's people like Kate Winslet or Emma Thompson or Samantha Morton, you know, who've made really interesting choices. But I've never had like I want to be here by this point. You know, I want to beat this person to this. I want to never repeat myself.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.